Today on the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast. We open our doors once again to one of our biggest Patreon supporters, Steve Karpicz. This is part one of a two-part show where Steve and I geek out about everything film music and listen to selections of choral music that he brought with him for you and me to enjoy. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Flagship show here on the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast, which begins now.
And streaming on the web since 1996. This is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
Welcome to the show. We have a real exciting program for you. I have a great chat with our guest today, Steve Karpicz. He's one of our biggest Patreon supporters, one of our newest supporters in the highest tier that we offer, which is actually sold out. And funny thing is, he wanted so bad to get into that group, which was actually only comprising of two people. I had to actually ask the other two if it was okay if Steve could upgrade his membership, and of course they said yes. So Steve has the opportunity to not only program today's show, but he got to host the program with me as well. And the other two guests that did this previously, Joe Wiles and William Welch, you can hear those shows on the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast as well. But before we get to the chat, I want to let you know that Cinematic Sound Radio does, yes, have a Patreon. And if you join the Patreon, you can get a whole load of interesting perks. There are a couple of tiers available where, one, you can just say thank you by offering a couple of bucks. And if that's all you want to do, then that's fine. Or you can join the Cinematic Sound Radio All Request show. We have a new one coming up in the next few months, which is actually going to be hosted by Jason Drury. You can also get the opportunity to program your very own show by picking the tracks that you want to hear on the program, and that costs a little bit more, but we have a whole bunch of people signed up for that perk as well. And you get to join the Discord, and you get to join the great community that we have here at Cinematic Sound Radio. So if you are interested in joining the Cinematic Sound Radio Patreon, head over to patreon.com/Cinematic Sound Radio. And we really do appreciate any support that you might send our way. And that helps out with numerous things. And we are very transparent about these payments as well, which includes server space, new equipment. We actually just paid again for another round of SOCAN payments for our license to play music here on the program. So there's a lot of things that that help go towards the show and make sure that the show stays online and on the air. And so with that all out of the way, let's welcome Steve Karpicz to the program.
Good evening, Eric. How are you?
I'm fabulous. I'm glad that we finally made this work. We were supposed to record this last week, but I was having some work issues. I'm still stupid busy, but I'm glad that we finally got a chance to talk. I always love talking to my fans, and the Patreon is giving me the opportunity to do that. And my conversations with Joe and Will previously have been fantastic, and I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you tonight.
Yes, same here. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, anytime. And you know what? I appreciate everything that you have done for the show, your support. It's been absolutely fantastic, and that's why you're here. And, we talked about the Patreon in the intro. So this is an exclusive tier here at Cinematic Sound Radio. And I think actually, didn't you ask me to open up one more spot because there was only 2 in the beginning?
I did. I was like, you know what? I wonder if you'd be willing to open up a third spot. I sent off an email, and I think it was like, I don't know, maybe like 2.3 milliseconds before you responded. Absolutely. So I jumped right on it.
Then that's fantastic, and Joe and Will were more than happy to share the spotlight. But it's an exclusive tier. I wanted to give it to like the super fans, and you three are definitely the super fans of Cinematic Sound Radio. So you get the exclusive opportunity to have a chat with me, and also to have a chat with the rest of the audience, and play the music that you want to hear on this show. So. Yeah, I know there's a couple of other people that have even asked to open it up to even more people, and I really would love to. I just don't have the time to kind of get to everything. So I've actually had to say no to a couple of other people. So, like I said, if you ever disappear, or Will or Joe, then the spot will open. But from now on, it's just 3 spots, and that's the way it's going to be for a very, very long time. So, but yeah, I thank you for your support, and I really do appreciate it.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, it's the music that brings us together, and opportunities like this to sit and chat and discuss what we like and what we don't like and what's fantastic and all that good stuff, right? Like just the sharing, the common bond, right? The stuff that brings us together. And, in these times, you need stuff like this, right? You need the break, you need the good stuff. You need the stuff that you cling to in the hard times, right? And this is one of the things for me, music. So, again, I couldn't be more appreciative of the opportunity, and I'm more than glad to help.
Yeah, before we even get to music, let's find out a little bit about you. Where were you born? Where are you from? What do you do? Tell me more about Steve.
Yeah, I'm strictly U.S. East Coast. I was born in Connecticut, moved to Massachusetts when I was 7. Lived there pretty much ever since. I work for local electrical utility in the greater Boston area. We've been there for almost 25 years now. So, it's a hectic business in itself. It's one of those industries that's on the go 24/7. So I work some overnight shifts, work afternoon shifts, a little bit of everything, right? But it's a public utility, so it just comes with the territory. So,
do you enjoy what you do?
It is a fantastic job, and I know many people can't say that, but I love my job. My job, it's different every day. It's something that, like in an emergency, something like that, you can feel like you've accomplished something for the greater good. And it's just always been something that I've enjoyed. I can honestly say that.
I mean, that's all you can really ask for, finding a job that really isn't a job. You wake up in the morning, and I mean, yeah, it could, like you said, it could be stressful. But if it doesn't feel like work, then I think you might have found the thing that you've wanted to do your whole life. And I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything else other than what I'm doing. And I constantly talk to my boss about that, because we go through tons of different companies, and we see different types of jobs. And I'm a videographer and editor as a full-time job. And, we'll talk to people and we'll see what they do. And we at times just look at each other going, I don't think I could, stand on that factory floor for 12 hours. And you know what I mean? And then again, I mean, I'm spoiled. I work at home, but I'm doing what I'm doing what I like. I can't say I love it, but it's within the industry that I grew up wanting to get into, at least, shooting video and editing video. So it's close to kind of movie making, but it's it's a different type of movie making. But at least, when I wake up, I'm not like, oh man, I got to go and do that 9 to 5 again. So yeah, you can only hope that everybody can appreciate something like that.
Absolutely. And I mean, I started out in customer service, just got the job as a foot in the door kind of thing. And, now I work out in the field and, we work with everything from as low as 120 volts to as high as 345,000 volts.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, it's dangerous at the same time, right? Like accidents happen and, people get hurt on the job, and there have been even fatalities here and there. And, but you have to be mindful of it, right? Like there's a safe way to do it. There's a way to minimize risk and stuff like that. But again, it's something that fits my personality, right? So when you talk about like jobs that you just go, yeah, this is meant for me. I'm not going to say that it was meant for me, but it's definitely a good fit for me, right? Like, again, I can feel more days than not that I'm at a job that I enjoy, despite all the bureaucracy and the red tape that comes with every job, right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
and, and all the personalities and stuff like that and all the stuff, you sit and I'm just groaning about, oh, do I have to work with this person today? Yada, 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 right? That stuff we all do, that's the common stuff. That's the stuff we all do, right?
For sure.
But what makes it worth for us as an individual, right? Like, again, I found something that I enjoy, so no complaints.
Yeah, and that's all you could ask for. Let's move on to music and soundtracks, of course, specifically. So when did you discover film music, and when did it become really a passion for you?
Well, this is not a day that I'm terribly proud of, to tell you the truth. So my first job, the day I turned 16, I got a job at a local movie theater. And one of the perks of that job was that, of course, you could come and see all the movies that you wanted for free. Even so far as there was a second cinema in a neighboring town, and they had a deal worked out where you could actually go and see movies there for free, and their employees could come see movies at our theater for free, right? So it was a nice little, quaint arrangement, but it meant that, because the way they worked it was we would get movies from certain like Warner Brothers, TriStar, they would get like Universal. So we weren't competing against each other, right? They kind of divvied them up according to who was putting the movies out. So you could see all the movies. You were only limited to seeing half of them. But the point being is that I got a job at a movie theater. I could see movies for free. And of course, being 16 at the time was also around the time that you get your first car and you start to enter the dating scene. So I brought a girl to see a movie because, of course, I didn't have much money and it was free. And
Right.
so the theater itself was old-fashioned in the sense that actually had a curtain draped down over the screen. And before the movie would start, the curtain would raise just as the lights were going up. And the movie that we went to see was Batman.
Oh, wow.
And, right, first date. And so the curtain is rising up, the lights are dimming, and then I'm hit with the Danny Elfman opening, just that kind of da na na na. And from that point on, I proceeded to forget that I was on a date, and I was just so captured by this opening, this music, right? It was our only date. But that's how I discovered cinematic music. Was this was Danny Elfman's? It was the first soundtrack I can ever remember going, this is amazing. I want to know who composed this. I want to see if I can get myself a copy. And so that was 1989?
Yeah.
I think was Batman, right?
Yep.
And so that was my start.
Wow.
Right?
That's kind of, I mean, for someone your age. I mean, I think I was about 12 or 13 at that time, maybe just turning 14. But I could always remember, like in my childhood, loving movies and knowing that the music was there. But like, did you have a love affair with movies before that time? Or was this like, oh my God, something extraordinary has just happened right now, seeing Batman, and where has this been all my life?
So, yes, I like to watch movies. I wouldn't consider myself a cinephile. The thing that I became aware of right at that point was the music behind it. And to be honest with you, I have a massive collection of soundtracks and scores to movies that I have never seen and probably will never see. In fact, I am often, well, I'm not embarrassed anymore, but the list of classic movies that I have never seen, but could tell you, track lists of, is a mile long, right? Like I'm grown to appreciate the music much more than the movies themselves. Not to say that I don't like movies, right? Because I mean, I grew up with movies. It was the HBO and Cinemax and all the pay channels came out and stuff like that. So I certainly enjoy movies, but I definitely enjoy soundtracks a lot more and the music behind it.
So what is it about like soundtrack music in particular that captivates you?
Before I had even discovered soundtracks, I had always been attracted to music in itself. I played the violin for 5 years from, I think like 9. I think it was 9 when I started. I think it's part of the intangible behind the music, right? Like there's just something about music, good music, what I think is good music that speaks to me. It's fulfilling in a way that nothing else seems to be able to do. It's funny because I was having a discussion with someone the other day we were talking about words and language and just about how like, words oftentimes are just crude as a way of communicating, because you can sit here and you can say, well, you can ask a simple question like, well, what do you like about music? And I could spill 10,000 words at you and still not come close to really describing, right? Like that inner feeling. To go back to the earlier example, like, that moment at 16 years old, you've got this old classic style cinema with the curtain coming up and lights, it's theatric, right? And of course that's what it's supposed to be, but it just caught me at that right moment, right? Like that, I like I said, it's hard to describe. Like I could just sit and listen to music. Like I could walk around with my earbuds on all the time and, I would be perfectly content, especially, to tie into the earlier point, like, you work at a job, then a lot of times there's loud machinery and a lot of noise going on. I worked in Boston for 9 years and, it's city traffic and, it's a comfort. It's something to say a love affair, I guess, is close. To say it's fulfilling is probably even closer, right? Like it's just a sense of completeness. To even think about, like, there was a time when music was pretty much all people had for entertainment, right? Like to go back to like to tie into tonight's theme just slightly, one of my favorite choral pieces is I'm going to totally butcher this. It's Latin Spem in Aleum, I think is how it's pronounced. It's by Thomas Tallis, and I believe it's a 48 piece, and it's all chorus, right? So there's 48 different voices, and they're split up into 8 different sections, and they're all singing at the same time, right? And just to like think like that was what they had, right? And I think that's what it really inspired my choice for the theme tonight. To be able to go to a place like an amphitheater, which is basically designed for sound, right? And what that experience must have been like, right? Where you can probably physically feel the sound coming from the chorus, right? Because it's just echoing off the walls. It's all around you. It probably was an amazing and somewhat religious experience in a more broad sense of the word. Not to get too far on a tangent, but, there have been studies about like the effect of sound waves on people and how, we drowned a lot of the sound waves out from the universe. And, it was the way we evolved. I'm going way off on a tangent.
No, and it makes sense. And I mean, what was coming to my mind were actually, it was two things. And you said, way back then, all they had, even without instruments was their own instrument, which was the voice. But I mean, I've had this conversation with my wife recently, and I asked her, I said, how long do you think it's been that we've had recorded music? And, and she's like, well, it's been like, 100 some odd years. And I'm like, I don't even think it might even be that, but I mean, like good sounding recordings that where you can listen to and go, yeah, that sounds like it was, we went to a concert and it was being performed live. I mean, to think that we've only had this type of technology for such a short amount of time when there are centuries of music out there, that the only way you could hear it is if it was performed live. And I don't know how in the world I got access to 7,000 soundtracks in my library, and I can listen to them at, snap of a finger. But I mean, the privilege of listening to music back then without having a recording must have been absolutely thrilling. And so I understand exactly what you're talking about. One other point that, I mean, before we get into the show, and I'm actually really fascinated by your description of music. We are a, cinematic sound radios, soundtracks. It's, film, TV, video game music, but you're talking about music. And I don't think I've heard you say, like score or soundtrack. So I'm curious whether you have a love affair with music. Like, are there other genres that you like? I mean, when you heard Batman, was that like the first time an orchestra kind of smacked you right in the face, or had you heard it before and maybe you haven't, heard it in, this type of style before? So, what is it about music? It's not just soundtracks for you, is it?
No, definitely not. I mean, soundtracks is my main focus, I guess, if you would call that. I mean, if you looked at my entire music collection, I mean, it would, the majority would be soundtracks for sure. I mean, it was definitely new. And again, I would have to say it was the combination of elements with the setting and, having never been exposed to that before. Like I said, I did play violin, but, you're playing pepperoni pizza, right? Do you know what pepperoni pizza is?
Yeah.
Where it's, it's just da 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 da, right? So I hadn't seen an orchestra before or anything like that. Everything I'd listened to music-wise before that was probably just pop radio, right? Like we still had Casey Kasem around back then, and you listen to American Top 40 on the weekends. I guess in looking at the type of music that I like outside of soundtracks, I mean, definitely classical music. I'll listen to pretty much anything as long as it clicks with me inside, right? Like when I listen to pop music, what I listen for is the instrumentation, and I don't necessarily listen to the lyrics, although of course, like if you hear a song 100 times, you just kind of pick those up by osmosis. But it's a combination of the instruments and then looking at the voice as itself an instrument, right? And how does that play against, say, the guitar or, the keyboard or the synthesizer or whatever instrumentation is going on in the background, right? So, I mean, I guess you could say I I look at pop music with a symphonic ear. Well, how do you look at something with an ear?
And then that does make sense. It does. Because I do the same thing with, like my favorite genre is, rock and roll. I grew up in the grunge era. But I like kind of anthem-esque, guitar rock, big melodies, even within like guitar solos. But I also love, the instrumentation, stripping away a bass from the rhythm guitar to the main guitar, to the voice, to the drums. What other little things are they adding in that, makes it interesting musically? Like Batted to Hell is something that just blew my socks off when I was a kid. But I just think that it was because of the instrumentation of it. I mean, it was also a grand, 10-minute piece of music that was like nothing I'd ever heard before. But there's just something very cinematic about it. And I find that I can get that within, like, I also like the storytelling. Again, I'm not one that really pays much attention to lyrics, but I like the storytelling aspect of certain music. So.
Right. And an example along a similar line for me would be like Appetite for Destruction by Guns N' Roses, right? Like everybody knows, Welcome to the Jungle was like, an insta hit, right? But I can remember the first time I listened to that album with earphones on, and you realize that what they've done is that they've got two lead guitars playing, and in each ear they're playing something different, right? They're playing different notes, and they're working and they're playing off of each other, and that to me was amazing, right? Like, I'm not the world's biggest Guns N' Roses fan, but like, to me, that album stands out as just like an amazing accomplishment, right? Like something, that I had never been exposed to, not to say that it hadn't been done before, but for me, it was the watershed moment where I was like, this is what I grew on right here. Right.
Well, I mean, I'm glad you brought up Appetite, because I am a huge Guns N' Roses fan. So, that's bonus points for you.
Well, I was in my 80s hair band phase for a while, right?
Yeah. I think we all were at that time.
Sure. But even, it was Def Leppard, but it was also like U2, and it was also, Pet Shop Boys, and all those great British bands. The 80s is just so rich. Depeche Mode, I'm not a big synthesizer, but there's just something about Depeche Mode that, again, and maybe it was the melodies that they played around with. It was just, a lot of minors and off chord sounds, and it just resonated with me. They'd done something that I hadn't heard before, right? And so again, another group that's just great to listen to with earphones on. Although, to get back to the earlier point, there are a lot of times where, like, I would prefer to be able to sit in the car and listen to music as opposed to listening with headphones on, because I just enjoy the feel, right, of the sound as much as I do. To me, it's part of the experience to feel it at the same time as listening to it, right? My friend Jared, who's out in California, who helped me put together the list for tonight's program, used to have this Pontiac Ferrero, and it had the world's best bass system in it. And it was just, we would sit and listen to Depeche Mode for hours. It was just great. You just drive around and listen, right? Like all kids do. You listen into your tunes and just kind of, out causing trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I do have a few other things I want to ask you, but we've talked for almost about a half an hour, and I think the listeners are kind of eager to hear what your theme is for this show. So let's kind of jump into that, and I'll bring these other questions up a little bit later on in the show. So tell us about your playlist and why you selected each of the tracks for this playlist.
So I think probably based on a conversation, you have an idea of what it may be and why I chose it. But Just to expand on it a little bit further, the theme is tracks that have some type of chorus or choral works in them, whether it's a full chorus, whether it's a single voice. Again, I mean, the human voice is an instrument. I mean, it's infinite in variety, right? Like you can say, well, this is a chorus. Yes, right. But as opposed to say like a violin where, you're only going to get so many flavors of a violin, a chorus you can have in infinite variety. And then, no greater compliment to an orchestra than a chorus in my mind. And nothing catches my ear quicker than as soon as you start to hear the voices in the background or the foreground or wherever it is. Always been a favorite internal category of mine. So I figured it was a good first selection for my show.
Yeah. And I did maybe a couple choral shows back on FM. I've never returned to it, and I don't know why, because, when you hear a chorus, a well-integrated chorus into a score just elevates it like no other device can. You could take a 90-piece orchestra that's just going absolutely nuts, and that can be impressive. But then, of course, the chorus comes in, and you're like, oh, wow, I got to pay attention to this. I had that reaction to this very first track that you brought with you from, wow, this film gets crapped on a lot. But the thing is, I have fond memories for First Night, which was released in 1995. Because it was one of the first films that I saw that introduced me to Jerry Goldsmith. And again, I was just starting to kind of get into soundtracks at this time and really associating certain music with composers and figuring out the composers. I always liked scores and soundtracks, but all of a sudden it was like, oh, that sounds like, oh, that guy who wrote Jerry Goldsmith. Yeah, wrote that score. So, there's a great moment when we see Camelot for the first time in this movie, and that just blew me away. But all the choral material right at the end is simply sublime. So why don't you tell us about the first track that you brought with you for your choral playlist?
Well, anyone who knows me knows that Jerry Goldsmith would easily be hands down my favorite composer. For the record, my favorite score of his of all time would be Poltergeist. That's not for this discussion, but it is I have yet to find anything that trumps it. And to say what it is about Goldsmith, it's the melody, it's the innovation. You look at his score for Alien, and it was just, it was, again, nothing I'd ever heard before. And it was just, how did he put that together for that kind of movie and make it all work? It just seems unfathomable, right? But yeah, First Night, I don't remember a tremendous amount of the movie, but the score is as soon as it came out, like, definitely picked it up, and it's been in my collection ever since. And the track is it's just great. When you need something to get you pumped up a little bit, right? Like, this is one of the go-to ones. Driving late at night, you need to stay awake, or you just want to kind of make yourself feel good for a little bit. It's got it all, the bold, brash chorus and the horns in the background, and it all works together. Couldn't think of a better first track to start us off with.
Yeah, it really is a good score. And it's, like I said, one of the first Goldsmiths I ever owned, and I found it in a used bin for probably like $7. I'm like, yeah, I'll take this home. And again, I only remembered moments of it, but then when I played the whole thing, I was like, wow, this is pretty spectacular. However, within the film music community, and even somewhat in the Jerry Goldsmith kind of community, the 90s Jerry Goldsmith music kind of gets dumped on, as Jerry Goldsmith would admit this, that his style significantly changed after Total Recall, where he simplified his music. But some fans feel that that's a negative, where I don't really have a problem with it. But then again, Jerry Goldsmith isn't my favorite composer of all time, but he's in kind of my Mount Rushmore of composers. But it's something that never really bothered me with the change of style. So, you're a huge Jerry Goldsmith fan. What do you think about his output from, let's say, 1990 on, and the kind of simplification of his music, for the lack of a better word?
What you have to realize is that the 90s output from Goldsmith was probably my first exposure to him, right? And so when you get that type of first impression, right, like you start to hear things, well, this isn't his best stuff and yada yada, and you're like, what are you talking about? This is the best stuff I've ever heard from him, right? And so from my context, like, I don't have a problem with it, right? Like, to me, that's the good stuff, and it always will be the good stuff, right? You mentioned Total Recall. I mean, that was another one. I probably ran into that movie every time they showed the scene with Quado, right, where he puts his hand on the mutant and the Schwarzenegger, and he has the flashback, and what's the track called?
The Mutant.
The Mutant, exactly. I mean, I must have run in every time that track played just to see that scene and hear that cut, because I mean, it's again, that's the stuff that I came up with in the Goldsmith. So I don't see a problem with any of it, honestly. I either like it or I don't, and I'm not one of those people that will sit and compare the composer's bodies of work against itself, right? Like, it either works for me or it doesn't. I'm pretty cut and dried in that respect.
And that makes complete sense. I discovered Goldsmith around the same time that you did as well. So, I didn't have the context of his older work to compare it to. And I mean, I find I have a lot of fun doing that. I like going back and analyzing the score and hearing the differences, but I never felt like in the 90s, Jerry Goldsmith was doing anything less than his best. And especially when he was talking about it, especially after Total Recall, if I can recall correctly, was, I write all this complex music, but it's like nobody's really hearing it, and then nobody's really appreciating what he's doing. So, why blow my brains out trying to write all these massive scores with all this intricacy, and let's just kind of simplify things. But he still had the same emotional power, that dramatic instinct, and that always came through with his music, whether it was something, let's say, quote unquote, simple, or something overly complicated. So yeah, it is amazing how perspective can come into play, and where you might have someone who grew up with film music since, the 50s or 60s and grew up with Goldsmith, and then hearing that change through into the 90s might be something wild or different or off-putting. But for people like, you and I, it was just, hey, this is Jerry Goldsmith. This is, he's fantastic, and the work that he's done in the 90s is awesome. So, what else has he done? And that's fascinating to discover his earlier stuff after hearing the stuff from the 90s. And that's what's so great about, film music. I mean, there's just so much of it out there, and the discoverability of it. I mean, I see these arguments all the time about, Goldsmith and his 90s music, and just, I mean, there's people who literally say, Total Recall, I'm done. I do not collect anything after that. I'm like, wow, you're missing out on so much good stuff. Yeah, it's not wild and crazy like Planet of the Apes, but it's still Jerry Goldsmith. How could you say no?
Right. Well, why deprive yourself of it, right? Like, why not just experience it all, right? I mean, why not just keep yourself open and say, okay, judge it on its own merits. Why does it have to be compared to other things that he's done? I just don't, I don't feel that type of outlook serves me very well. I tend not to see a lot of movies. For example, like Poltergeist, as I mentioned, was my favorite score, right? Like, I can hear Poltergeist, but it has that added element of being able to picture the movie at the same time. So it's the combination of two versus just listening to a score by itself, where I can form my own emotional resonance on the piece itself, right? So, for example, I can remember when they finally released the Goldsmith version of Legend, and I was just ecstatic. because it was on CD, and there was no digital music back then, and I was just over the moon to try and get it. And it took a few weeks, but I've never seen the movie. I have no idea what the movie is about. I know there's a Tangerine Dream score, and I haven't listened to that either. But to listen to Legend and just listen to it from a musical standpoint, I mean, it's amazing. What's not to love about it? And Darkness Falls, I mean, to have that 8.5 minute cut with the chorus in there, and then the ending of the cut is just, that might be another theme, is how for a future show, is how, who really brings it right at the end, right? That last 15 to 20 seconds. Point being, it's, you should just listen to it, right? And try and keep an open mind. And a lot of times, the first time I listen to a soundtrack, I'm not paying attention to it. I've just got the earbuds on and I'm letting it play at a low volume. And sometimes the piece will just catch your ear and you go, okay, what track is this, right? Then you really listen to it. That's kind of the way I listen to my music, right? It's one at a time, and see whether I like it or not, And sometimes they'll kind of be on the fence about it, and you put it aside and you make a note to come back to it in a couple months and see if you feel a little bit differently about it. But yeah, I mean, I have no problem with any of his 90s stuff. None of it. Well, I mean, it's all good.
Well, all this talk about listening, maybe we should listen to a track finally. But it's great to have this conversation with you. But we're going to open up your choral playlist with a banger. It's just a fantastic cue. This comes from Jerry Goldsmith's last minute score. It is a replacement score, written in 1995 for First Night. This is Arthur's Farewell. All right, now we're moving on to another choral piece. This is a classic 90s score right at the beginning of the 90s, written by Basil Poledouris for the John McTiernan action suspense thriller Hunt for Red October. And we're going to play for you the hymn to Red October, a classic choral piece of music. Probably the best cue on the soundtrack. It's actually a score that I don't listen to that often. I'm not a huge fan of it as a whole, but this opening cue is pretty magnificent. And so, Steve, tell us a little bit about why you brought this cue to the show.
So there was a large internal debate about this track because, of course, in looking at submarine movies, the competitor for this was Crimson Tide. So I went back and forth and back and forth. A lot of the tracks on the Crimson Tide soundtrack tend to be overtly long, where they just cut up the cues to put them into the movie. And I think that was the ultimate deciding factor, was just the timing constraint. I mean, nothing wrong with Crimson Tide. In fact, was my first exposure to Hans Zimmer, was Crimson Tide. So, I love that score as well. So opted for the Poledouris cut, more so for timing constraints. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's nasty in itself, right? Like, I mean, the chorus brings it, right? Like the male chorus is just rocking the whole time, and you can just, it sets the tone perfectly for the movie. And don't really remember too much about the movie, to tell you the truth, but it felt like the next logical choice to follow up with the Goldsmith. As I'm sure many, many, many people have, I've long relished in the playlist making, right? Like going back to even cassettes, right? Like I would have, you get your one blank cassette, and you'd have, 9 other music cassettes, and they were all queued up, ready to record the songs that you want. And I'd sit there, and you'd sit there with a clock, and you'd watch to see how long the actual song was, and I'd plan it all out. I was super anal retentive about making playlists, and I still am, but that's part of the thrill to me. So in looking at this playlist, I gave it the same amount of attention, in sort of like a cinematic flair, I guess. You kind of, once you see a certain amount of movies, you kind of get a sense of how a movie works. When you've seen, say, 10 horror movies or 50 horror movies, you kind of know how horror movies work, right? You start out with the kill, and then you get introduced to the main character, and yada, yada, yada. You kind of get the natural progression. And so in looking at the playlist, I feel like it kind of follows similar guidelines, although they're probably more internal to me, the way I want the resonance of the pieces to kind of work together, how I felt it was best. So, you start off with the raucous Goldsmith piece, and you go right into Poledouris, and it felt like the next logical choice to go with. So
I love that you were extremely detailed with your playlist selections, not just this one, but when you were making mixtapes, or like I was exactly the same way, just trying to find that right balance. Like I'd love creating the compilation albums. There's a balance between a loud song and a quieter song, or even paying attention to timing things out. I mean, one of the things that I would do is, like, you come near to the end of a tape, and you're like, okay, well, how much time do I have left? And I want to get this 4-minute track on there, but it's only like 3.5 minutes. And the only reason I can find out that it's 3.5 minutes is, like, I would play 3.5 minutes of silence until the tape ends. And I'm like, okay, so now I got to go find that, 3.5 minute track to fit in there. And I'm going to rejiggle, my playlist, and I've got it all written down on a pad of paper and whatever. And, you know, there was even points you're talking about, you know, being incredibly anal when it comes down to the production of a playlist, is where I magically found, and I'm not sure how I did it. I used to tape from my boombox, my double cassette boombox. And I managed to find out how to eliminate that horrible stop sound. Like if you stopped a track, right, and then you started a new track recording, you'd always hear a stop in the tape. And I don't know how I did it, but I figured out a way that I can go back, you know, pause a recording and then play the master recording, for lack of a better word, and then unpause it at a certain time, and you'd have that silence between tracks without having, you know, that noisy break. And the thing is, nobody else was listening to this but me. But it annoyed the hell out of me. You know what I mean? It's like, why am I doing all this work? And then could you, I mean, were there times where, like, you know, you're putting the tracks on the cassette itself, and you have to make it like as neat as possible, or you color code it, or you kind of have to make sure that each letter is, you know, your lettering is small enough so that it all fits. It was, making a playlist was like an art form for me.
Absolutely. I mean, it was something satisfying about it, right? Like it fed the anal retentive, you know, logical, progressive side of me. And then not just in making playlists, but like in so many things in my life, there are a lot of things that I like to apply that same type of logic, like that same sense of order, right? And more often than not, it's, again, just based on my own aesthetics more than anything else, right? Like somebody could look at that and go, why did you do that? And I went, well, you know, because it felt right to me, right? And then that was all that mattered, right? So I guess in a weird sense, it was a type of expression, right? Like it was, okay, this is what matters to me, and this is how I'm going to put it together because it's the way that resonates with me the most.
I think the next logical question before we get to the track then is, how do you organize your CDs?
Strictly by title.
Okay. So you're not like a soundtrack fan that puts all his, you know, the maroon colored Vrez spines in one spot, or
no. More than content with title.
Yeah.
It works. It's always worked. It's easy enough to relocate things when you get something new. Title is more than happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to look at. I love seeing the pictures of, you know, people with their thousands of Vrez albums, where I'm like, how do you find anything? Like, really? But I'm by composer, and then you're right, like by title. Sometimes it's by year. I mean, I'm all over the place. But as long as I know where all my, the composers are, if I can find where the composers are, I'm happy. Because usually you can just kind of sift through and find whatever. But yeah.
Even for like trilogies, right? Like Empire Strikes Back is under E, Star Wars is under S, Return of the Jedi is under R, right?
Now, is it all just like the wholes, or are you organized by composer as well? Or is it just like title, like A to Z, and that's it?
That's it.
Wow.
A to Z, baby. Yep.
Hey, at least you
don't need anything more than that. Yeah, exactly. That's it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's get to our next piece. This is Hymn to Red October by Basil Poledouris from the 1990 submarine spy thriller, The Hunt for Red October.
Bringing you the very best music for film, TV and video games, this is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
And we're back with our guest, Steve Karpicz. He is one of our biggest Patreon supporters, and if you want to help support the show, then please head over to patreon.com/cinematicsoundradio. There are numerous tiers still open that you can join, and you can also help Cinematic Sound Radio by doing so. Unfortunately, the tier that Steve is in, along with two other people, is not available anymore. And so we do appreciate that you took the chance and wanted to get on the show and talk to me and talk about soundtracks and play your own playlist. And we got another banger up for you. This is from the 2003 Matrix sequel called The Matrix Revolutions. A real kind of disappointing end to this trilogy that started off oh so well with the first movie. But what wasn't disappointing was Don Davis's score. I would say all three are classics. Unfortunately, they are incredibly, I'd say, underrated to even the general audience, where scores like Howard Shore's The Lord of the Rings are constantly brought up, and rightfully so, as being classics of that genre. And there's books that are written and expanded editions and this and that, and everybody loves the Lord of the Rings. Around that same time, Don Davis was writing these incredibly experimental, different scores, and not one of them got an Academy Award nomination. And I could see that being so off-putting to a composer. I mean, awards don't mean everything, but when you write something this good, it just shocks me that the music branch said, no, we don't really think that these are one of the 5 best scores of the year. And he ended it in Don Davis did in such a spectacular fashion, giving this third film, which again, to me was a letdown, a score that it probably didn't deserve, but man, it went out in a blaze of glory. And we're going to play for you the choral masterpiece, Neo Damarung, which is just, probably one of the most memorable pieces of music from this series of movies. So, Steve, tell us a little bit about this track.
So, as we talked about briefly earlier, in considering what tracks to put on, was very conscious of extended length tracks, but to me, this one was a no-brainer. As disappointing as these movies were received, and to be honest, I haven't finished the third one ever.
Don't worry, I wanted to walk out of the theater halfway through as well, but I managed to get through it. But yeah, anyway, I digress.
This track brings it. I have since seen the music put to the movie just on a YouTube clip. I watched the whole. I watched the music basically.
Right.
just to kind of get a little bit of context for it. And it's everything you would hope for the climax of a trilogy, right? Like the music brings exactly what it needed to do. It did its job and then some. And again, the first time I heard it, I had no sense of context of what it was for. I knew it was towards the end of the third album, so I assumed it was climax related, and it obviously was. But what a track! And so, despite its extended length, this was just one that I went. If you haven't heard it, you got to hear it, right? You got to appreciate it. The chorus in itself. Not having seen the movie, I can't give you too much context. I understand that a lot of the Matrix had religious overtones and allegory and stuff like that. Whether that factored into his decision or not to put the chorus in, I don't know. But as far as choral tracks go, the chorus is an absolute highlight, really.
It's an enormous track, and I think again, I don't know whether Don Davis was influenced by it, but we're coming off of John Williams writing one of his greatest choral pieces for Duel of the Fates, for the climactic lightsaber battle in the Phantom Menace, and Don Davis just one-ups it with this track. And here's the thing about the track is that it could easily have been considered way too over the top, almost to the point of being cheesy, because of the way that this scene is filmed in portions where, really the slow motion effect comes in some really odd moments, and it could almost be laughable to see some of it. But for some reason, just the setting, all the rain, and this being the final duel between Neo and
Agent
Smith. And it's almost like the Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, final battle, although John Williams didn't go over the top with that, although he did introduce chorus, very dramatic chorus during that lightsaber battle. But this was just the battle to end all battles, and especially with everything else that's going on in the movie as well. It's just like, it's overload. That's also another thing where this could have just been another noisy track amongst a whole bunch of other noise that's happening throughout this film. But it's really the one of few quote unquote Matrix styled scenes in this film. And so I think that's why so many people like it, but the track is just absolutely incredible. And then when it was reworked into the end credit piece, Navarus, it's absolutely magnificent. And yeah, Don Davis, man, where is he? I'm just so sad to see him just kind of fall off the face of the earth kind of after these scores. But these are masterpieces, and it isn't up until maybe Christopher Willis with the personal history of David Copperfield a couple of years ago where we've heard this style of music again. So Don Davis really did something different that not too many have done before or since.
Yeah, I think what really made this track stand out for me is given the context of all three movies and all three scores in particular, where so much of it was electronic based. To have a piece like this that came out with just a full-on orchestra with the choral backing was just, I mean, it was brilliant, right? Like to set it up and just go old school classic, right? Here's your orchestra, here's the trumpets in your face, here's the chorus, bringing it home. I mean, it just, the contrast made it stand out all the more for me. And again, I mean, this was just a no-brainer to put it on the list. So keeping it strong and hard with the heavy stuff. This was, from the internal aesthetics, it just felt like the next natural progression. I really, 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 really hope everyone enjoys this one.
I think they will. Here's Don Davis's Neodemerung from The Matrix Revolutions.
Yeah, I mean, that track is just outstanding.
Oh, it's freaking amazing. I remember hearing it for the first time, and I think I got the album the day that the movie came out. And me and two other buddies, we went to see this movie, and we were just blasting. I said, you guys got to play this track, and then you got to play this track. I know we have like maybe 20 minutes to get to the movie theater, so it's like play this and then play that, and we'll get pumped for it. And it was absolutely incredible. And I'm not all about the awards anymore, but it was just shocking at these, and nobody's writing books. Nobody's really celebrating these. Although, I mean, now I think we're finally getting to, I know that was it Don Davis or was it David Newman? I know they conducted a live to picture a long time ago, and I know they did the Matrix Symphony. I think that came out.
That must have been amazing.
Man, back to 2007. I think that opened up a film music festival. Movie Score Media released it, but it's like, this doesn't get performed anymore. Nobody's remembering the Matrix. And again, I think it's just because of how poorly the last two films were received. But that first one, oh my God, I would die to see that live. I think that would be fantastic. The orchestra would just hate it.
And like I said, I have probably seen maybe the first half hour of the third one. So any context I have for that soundtrack is, strictly internal. It had nothing to do with the movie. Even after watching that end scene, I still, when I play that song in my head, like, I don't think about the movie in association with that song at all. It's all, where I was and what I was doing the time I heard it, and just that type of emotional memory rather than, as opposed to associating it with the movie. So,
well, coming out of that, we are now going to listen to, well, if you're familiar with the podcast, you know how excited I am about not only the music from this film, but from the film itself. It's the 2013 remake of Evil Dead, and it features one of my favorite scores of the last 13, 15 years. I think it's one of the greatest horror scores ever composed by Roque Banos. And, we were talking earlier about context, and I remember hearing this, as I do with most of the soundtracks that I have, before seeing the movie. And so when I heard the air raid siren that was employed into this score, now you might not have had the same experience, but then I was like, well, what in the world does that represent in the movie? I mean, it did conjure visuals in my mind without having seen the movie, but then I was like, I have got to figure out why that was added. And especially when you hear it in this track, Abominations Rising, which is one of the greatest cues I think of all time. And it's not an exaggeration. But when I found out, why Banos used it, because it was a sound that's terrified him when he was a kid, hearing police sirens and fire trucks going past his bedroom window. And so that association of being scared as a kid, he was able to employ it into his score. And I haven't heard anything like this before in my life. But then of course, just the incredible orchestral writing and the choral music, seeing Banos conduct this during a film music festival as well, just knowing how much fun he had writing this score. And then you could see it even on the faces of the chorus, that they're just having a blast. And then the orchestra is like, what is this? What's going on? What are these sounds? We don't get too many scores like this, except maybe only in the horror genre, where the orchestra is still employed and still allowed to tell the story. And so I'm so glad that you brought this track. I would love to play Evil Dead on each and every show, but I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about this score and this track.
This score was probably one of the exceptions, in the sense that I actually did see it with the context of the movie before I listened to it in its entirety. That being said, I mean, it's still a knockout, standout track. The energy is relentless. It's all over the place. It's everything you would want in this crazy chaos kind of ending. Perfectly synced up with what's going on at the screen at the same time. You've got the chorus. You've got that bit where it's almost like they're just like not so much yelling, but like maybe they are
shouting,
yelling, but
yeah,
right. And to me, like when I listen to that, I think it reminds me of the style of like the Greek choruses, right? In the old traditional style of Greek theater, where the chorus was standing behind and telling part of the tale, right? They were a character in it. And the style just reminded me of that, where, it's obviously in Latin, so I have no idea what they were saying, but the chorus is super effective in this, and they drive it home, right? Like not to take anything away from the orchestral part of it, because, there's that, like you said, there's the air siren, and then there's that, I don't know the name of the instrument, but it's like a rattle, right? Like it's like marbles in the thing on the stick, and they spin it around, and it just kind of makes that ratchety noise, like something you'd have on New Year's Eve, right? Like a rattler or whatever they call it, right? It's something, as you alluded to, that horror movies excel at, just keeping it raw, keeping it fresh, and just being a part of the story, which so many good soundtracks do. I mean, we haven't talked about this, but I'm already going to take it as read that like horror movies are probably, for me at least, are my favorite genre of scores, hands down. We grew up on horror movies. My mother seemed to not have a problem with me watching horror movies. I mean, she watched them with us, which was fine. We didn't freak out after the first few ones. I was just talking with my mother about this the other day. There was this movie, I think it was called The Hand.
Yeah.
It's just this guy, somehow, like his hand gets decapitated and becomes possessed and stuff like that. But it was the really, truly first visceral horror scene I had ever seen. Because the way it happens is that he's driving, and he sticks his hand out of a window, and a car comes the other way, and it just, takes the hand off. And, I was 7, 8 or whatever, but it stuck out in my mind, right? I hadn't seen Halloween or anything like that at that point. I think my mother probably sat on the couch and watched my reaction, and when she saw I didn't freak out, was like, okay, I guess horror movies are okay for them. So
it's it's insane, because I will see many stories, like even whether it's on YouTube where people are reviewing past horror movies that they saw as kids, and some of the movies that they were able to see when they were like 8, 9, 10 years old. And I'm like, I didn't see my first horror movie until I went to a hockey. It wasn't a banquet, but it was just it was a day where we all got together. We played some road hockey in the morning, and then we went back and had a party at somebody's house, and we watched some movies. I was 10, could have been maybe a little bit older, but I'd never seen like a horror movie before. I was shielded from it. Not that my parents were like, oh, you can't watch this, you can't watch that, but they were conscious about, the MPAA ratings on boxes. And so, anytime we rented movies, it was like, oh, there's one for the kids, and then there's one for the adults. I mean, one of the first like adult films that I saw was like Die Hard. And I was like, what is this? This is incredible. And I saw that as a teenager. But like horror movies, I saw Demons, and that was the first one I ever saw. And it ruined me from watching horror movies. I ran out of that room. Like we were watching them with my team, and I'm watching this, and there's a portion where the lady puts on this demonic mask, and she gets scratched on her cheek, and then later that becomes infected during that same day, and she goes into the bathroom, and basically her cheek explodes, and I'm like, what is happening? What is going on? And then she turns into a demon, kills a whole bunch of people. There's blood and guts all over the place. I'm like, I can't deal with it. I ran out of the room, and I was just crying, and I'm like, take me home. Call my parents. I have to leave. Well, I stuck around. My parents are like, I can't come get you now. And they're like, okay, fine, we'll turn off Demons and we'll put on Friday the 13th Part 6.
Oh.
I'm like, okay. And so again, that one just stuck with me, but that didn't freak me out as much as it was just like, who are these? What is this? I've heard of Jason before. I've heard of Freddy before. I've heard of, Michael Myers, but now I'm actually watching it, and those experiences they just stick with you. And so from that point on, I was like, I'm never watching another horror movie again. And of course that changed. But still, watching something like Poltergeist at 2:00 in the morning on television, and, you're alone in your dark basement. And I got halfway through that movie. I'm like, nope, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I mean, this one, the part when he's peeling his face off and a piece of steak's moving.
No, classic.
Like, it's classic now. I love it. I absolutely love it. But it was a genre, unlike you and like a lot of people who are our age, that seemed to have watched these movies when they were like toddlers. And I had kids down the street from me, like, yeah, this kid watches RoboCop, he watches all these other films. I'm like, and this is my brother's friends. My brother's like 5 years younger than I am. And like, it's like a 6-year-old watching RoboCop. And I'm like, I haven't even seen RoboCop. So
I've never had a problem with it, but I totally see the other side of the coin, right? Like, some people, it is an acquired taste, right? Like, my kids don't have a problem with it. And, I don't remember the first horror movie I saw with them. Maybe it was Evil Dead 2. And so I think you could do really a lot worse than Evil Dead 2 as your first horror movie. And my son was, 11. And so, he was old enough to understand. And, Evil Dead 2 it's part slapstick, right? So, the horror is there and it's shocking and it's, brilliantly done. But, it was definitely, it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of movie, that, whatever's happened when he takes the chainsaw and he cuts his hand off, he's just cutting, he's just running a chainsaw off camera so you can hear the noise, and they spray some blood up on this. So,
unlike this remake, though, just everything's practical, everything's in your face. This last scene with this music is all just dripping blood for 8 minutes. No holds barred. They didn't hold back.
No, and the music is right there with them. As we talked about, the chorus is front and center for a lot of it, and it's driving it. And there's a lot of dissonance in the music. The strings are vibrating furiously. There's a technical term for it, but the staccato, maybe, I don't know.
No, there's a real kind of like, there's a heartbeat to this piece. It really does add to the nervousness of this scene. You're hoping that she's going to get away, and she's struggling. And again, this could all be just totally silly and out of place, but then the music comes in and it just adds the right amount of drama, scares, but it's also a whole lot of fun. I mean, when that air raid siren comes in, when the car smashes on her arm and then she has to rip her arm off, and you can just tell that, the air raid siren's kind of like, what's going through her mind, the horror of the experience and of that moment. And she knows that she has to do something to escape, but she can't. And the car is literally on her arm. The demon is coming towards her. It's like she's got to make a decision. And this air raid siren's just ramping up. And it's almost as if like it's inside her head, the situation that she's in. And she has to make this horrific decision to rip off her own arm to escape. And I absolutely love those things and adding that extra bit of context to the scene. I love the movie. A lot of people don't like it because that kind of slapstick comedic element is pretty much gone. But I think that's what's so great about the remake, is that it's not just another rehash of what Raimi did with his Evil Dead films. And the score couldn't be any more different than what Leduca was doing.
Knowing what I know about Evil Dead 2, from what I understand, they didn't have a very large budget to work off of. So you weren't going to get the type of grand orchestral pieces that you get out of a lot of the typical horror movies. Although, of course, John Carpenter wrote all his own themes and made all his own music and stuff like that. So you didn't need a big budget to make something, iconic, I guess. But in today's digitally enhanced days, not to say that, I don't know if they used an actual orchestra or not, but I mean, it's easy enough to synthesize what you need, even if you don't have the budget. So you would expect the grandiose to be there, especially given the nature of this as compared to the first one, right? Like, the movie took itself seriously, and the music wanted you to know that. And it was all building towards that last scene, and the pieces just married to the movie perfectly. It's just great. It's outstanding.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. This score actually won some awards with the International Film Music Critics Association. It won for Best Original Score for sci-fi, not sci-fi, fantasy and science fiction horror film. And it also won the Film Music Composition of the Year for this track. This is Roque Banos's Abominations Rising. We will end our first part of our conversation with Steve Karpicz right there. We have much more to discuss, and you'll hear that on part 2 of this episode. Looking at the edit right now, there's about an hour-long conversation left to kind of cut down. There's music in between there. So I didn't want this program to be 2.5 hours, 3 hours long. So I'm going to cut it around the 90-minute mark, and we'll come back to this conversation on a later date. But I do want to thank Steve for stopping by, for taking the time to chat with me, and I hope you all look forward to the second part of this conversation, which will be on the show at a future date. I really hope you enjoyed the program today, and we will leave you with more music from Roque Banos' brilliant score to Evil Dead, released in 2013. This is the track, The Pendant and Evil Tango. The original soundtrack recording was released on La La Land Records. Thanks again for tuning in, folks. I really hope you enjoyed the program. And until next time, take care and happy listening. Thank you for tuning in to the Cinematic Sound Radio Network. I want to thank Tim Burton for providing his voice for all the bumpers and stingers you hear throughout the show, and to David Coscina for providing Cinematic Sound Radio's intro music. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. You can find us on social media at Cinsound Radio on Twitter, at Cinematic Sound on Facebook, and from wherever you're listening to us today, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. Reviews help introduce potential new listeners to the show. While you're at it, head over to TeePublic to find yourself a Cinematic Sound Radio t-shirt and support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/Cinematic Sound Radio. And don't forget to check out Cinematic Sound Radio at cinematicsound.net.